A young influencer films a dance challenge at Arlington Cemetery. 48 hours later, her career is destroyed. Millions cancel her. Sponsors vanish. Death threats pour in. But what if this wasn't the disrespectful stunt the internet thinks it was? What if the truth was buried, along with the hero she came to honor? Behind every viral scandal lies a secret no one's ready to hear. Your comments remind me that we're not alone in feeling deeply. If loyalty, second chances, and human dignity mean something to you, then you're right where you belong. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Arlington National Cemetery as Veronica Hawthorne pulled into the parking lot, her hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. Memorial Day always brought a mix of emotions. Grief tangled with pride, loss wrapped in love. She checked her phone's GPS one last time, frowning at the unfamiliar surroundings, but too focused on her schedule to question it further. "I'm here, Dad," she whispered, gathering her dance bag from the passenger seat. The familiar weight of her well-worn ballet slippers inside brought comfort, just as they had every year since she was 12 years old. Veronica hurried along the paths between the endless rows of white headstones, her auburn hair catching the golden light. Her social media followers expected her usual evening post in less than an hour, but this moment, this dance, had always been just for her and her father. This year, though, something felt different. Maybe it was time to share this piece of herself, to let others see how a daughter honored her fallen soldier. The cemetery looked different from what she remembered, grander somehow, but grief had a way of changing memories. She found a quiet corner among the perfectly aligned markers, her heart aching at the sight of so many fallen heroes. Setting up her phone on a small tripod, Veronica took a deep breath and slipped off her shoes. "This is still our dance, Dad," she murmured, her green eyes filling with tears as she began the gentle warm-up movements her father had taught her. Staff Sergeant Robert Hawthorne had always said that dance was life itself, a celebration of movement, of being alive. Even after all these years, she could still hear his laugh as he twirled her around their living room. The late spring breeze carried the sweet scent of fresh-cut grass as Veronica began to dance. Her movements were graceful, yet powerful, each gesture infused with 12 years of love and loss. This wasn't the polished choreography she usually shared online. This was raw, real, the story of a daughter's heart told through motion. She let muscle memory guide her through the familiar steps, her bare feet pressing against the cool ground. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and pink, and for a moment she felt closer to her father than she had in years. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she kept dancing, pouring every ounce of emotion into each movement. As she finished the final turn, Veronica wiped her eyes and walked over to her phone. The video had captured everything. The dance, the beautiful cemetery, the emotion plain on her face. Without overthinking it, she quickly edited the footage, adding a simple caption: "For every daughter who's danced with her father in heaven. Memorial Day. Dance Challenge, honor our heroes." Her fingers hovered over the post button for just a moment before she pressed it. 2.8 million followers would see this piece of her heart, but somehow that felt right. Maybe her father's story, their story, could touch others who carried the same grief. Back in her car, Veronica checked her phone one last time before heading home. The video was already gaining traction, shares and likes climbing quickly. She smiled softly, imagining her father's reaction. He'd always encouraged her to share her gift for dance, to use it to bring joy to others. The GPS recalculated her route home as she pulled out of the parking lot, and Veronica frowned again at the unfamiliar street names. Something tugged at the edge of her consciousness, a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right, but she pushed it aside. The dance had left her emotionally drained, as it did every year, and all she wanted now was to get home. "Love you, Dad," she whispered to the quiet car interior. "Until next year." The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant streaks of orange and purple as she drove, unaware that her Memorial Day tribute was about to become something very different from what she'd intended. Her phone buzzed continuously with notifications, but she'd silenced it for the drive home, not knowing that her innocent mistake was already spreading across social media like wildfire. In her rearview mirror, the grand entrance to Arlington National Cemetery grew smaller and smaller, a detail she still hadn't processed in her grief-touched haze. The place where she'd just danced wasn't her father's local cemetery at all, but she wouldn't realize this crucial error until it was far too late. The dance that had always been her most private moment of connection with her father was now out there for the world to see, tagged with trending hashtags and gaining momentum with every passing minute. Veronica drove home in peaceful ignorance, feeling more connected to her father's memory than she had in years, not knowing that this moment of vulnerability would soon become the center of a social media firestorm. She smiled softly, remembering how her father used to say that sometimes the best things in life come from our biggest mistakes. In the coming days, those words would take on a meaning she never could have anticipated. But for now, she was just a daughter who had danced for her father, unaware that her simple tribute was about to change everything. The first angry comment appeared just as Veronica was settling in for the evening. She almost missed it among the usual flood of hearts and supportive messages. But something about the words made her pause. "How dare you dance on soldiers' graves at Arlington? Show some respect." Arlington? Her heart stopped. That couldn't be right. She opened her location history and felt the blood drain from her face. The familiar cemetery where she'd visited her father for 12 years was 20 miles in the opposite direction. She'd been so focused on her posting schedule, so caught up in her grief, that she hadn't noticed the GPS had led her to the wrong place. No, she whispered, her hands shaking as she scrolled through the rapidly multiplying comments. The video was spreading faster than anything she'd ever posted before, but not in the way she'd hoped. "Disgusting influencer uses fallen heroes for views. Dancing on sacred ground? You should be ashamed. Report this disrespectful trash." Veronica's fingers flew across her phone screen as she tried to delete the video, but it had already been downloaded and reposted countless times. Her follower count, usually a steady 2.8 million, began dropping so fast the numbers seemed to blur. The first sponsor email arrived at 9 o'clock. "In light of recent events, we must terminate our partnership effective immediately." By midnight, she'd received 12 more just like it. Each one felt like another nail in the coffin of the career she'd spent years building. Her phone buzzed with a text from her manager, Brad. "This is beyond damage control. Don't contact me again." Short, cruel, final. Tears splashed onto her screen as she read it over and over. The death threats started flooding her direct messages around 2 in the morning. "Hope you die, grave dancer. People like you don't deserve to live." Each one made her feel smaller, more alone. She couldn't stop reading them, even as they grew more violent, more specific. Morning brought no relief. Her name was trending nationwide, attached to words like heartless, unpatriotic, and disgraceful. News outlets picked up the story, their headlines growing more sensational by the hour. "Social media star desecrates Arlington National Cemetery, and influencer's Memorial Day dance sparks national outrage." Veronica tried posting an explanation video, her voice breaking as she described her father's death, the annual dance tradition, the GPS mistake. But the internet had already decided who she was. Comments called her a liar, claimed she was making excuses, said she was using her dead father for sympathy. She deleted the video after just 20 minutes, but clips of it circulated anyway, now with added commentary about her fake tears. Her phone lit up with a text from her best friend Rachel. "I think it's best if we don't talk for a while. This isn't good for my brand." Others followed, friends, collaborators, even family members asking for space until things blew over. Veronica sat on her couch, surrounded by the remnants of her life before. Photos with sponsors, collaboration awards, the tablet she used to edit her content. Her phone continued to buzz with hatred, each notification feeling like another punch to the gut. Her follower count had dropped below 1 million and was still falling. She opened her email to find her inbox overflowing with cancellations. Brand deals, speaking engagements, podcast appearances, all gone. 3 years of hard work destroyed in less than 24 hours. The apartment she loved, the life she'd built, all of it depended on an income that had just vanished. A news alert popped up on her screen. Her dance video was playing on national television. The anchors discussed it with stern faces, their words sharp with judgment. "This kind of disrespect for our fallen heroes cannot be tolerated," one said, while another questioned what this behavior said about today's youth. Veronica's tears had long since dried up, replaced by a hollow feeling in her chest. She clicked on her latest content metrics and watched as everything crumbled. Engagement down 98%, follower count still dropping, video shares in the millions but all with negative comments. The career she'd built since she was 12 years old, the platform she'd used to process her grief and connect with others, had become a weapon turned against her. She thought about her father, about how proud he'd been of her dancing. "You've got stardust in your soul, princess," he used to say. Now that stardust had turned to ashes in her mouth. The dance that was meant to honor him had become a source of national shame, her most private. The old farmhouse creaked in the summer heat as Veronica huddled on her childhood bed. 3 weeks had passed since the video, but the internet's rage showed no signs of cooling. Here, in her mother's home outside Richmond, Virginia, there was at least some peace. No photographers camping on the street, no angry people following her at the grocery store. She traced her fingers over the faded ballet shoes painted on the wall, remembering hours spent practicing routines while her father watched from the doorway. The memory made her chest ache. What would he think of her now? The sharp rap of knuckles on the front door jolted her from her thoughts. Her mother was at work, and no one knew she was here except family. Veronica crept to the window, her heart pounding. An elderly Asian woman stood on the porch, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wire-rimmed glasses catching the afternoon sun. The woman knocked again, more insistent this time. Veronica considered pretending she wasn't home, but something in the woman's determined stance suggested she wouldn't give up easily. Taking a deep breath, Veronica made her way downstairs. Her hand trembled as she opened the door. "Can I help you?" "I'm Margaret Winston." The woman's voice was steady, controlled. "You danced in front of my son's grave at Arlington National Cemetery." Veronica's stomach dropped. She gripped the doorframe to keep from swaying. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... May I come in?" Margaret's tone left no room for refusal. Veronica stepped back, letting the older woman enter. In the living room, Margaret's sharp brown eyes took in the family photos on the walls, many showing a younger Veronica dancing, her father beaming beside her. "They're using my Michael's headstone in their memes now," Margaret said, her controlled voice finally cracking. "They put cartoon characters on it. They write cruel jokes across his name. My son died serving his country, and now he's become part of some internet joke because of you." Tears spilled down Veronica's cheeks. "I never wanted that. I was supposed to be at Cedar Grove Cemetery. That's where my father is buried. I've danced at his grave every Memorial Day since I was 12. The GPS took me to the wrong place, and I was so focused on maintaining my posting schedule that I didn't realize..." She wrapped her arms around herself, the words tumbling out. "It was our thing, you know. Dad taught me to dance. He always said that life should be celebrated, even in grief. The dance was for him, to show him I was still living, still moving forward like he wanted." Margaret's expression flickered. "Your father was military?" Veronica nodded, reaching for a framed photo on the side table. "Staff Sergeant Robert Hawthorne. He died in Afghanistan when I was 12. She handed the picture to Margaret, who studied it with suddenly gentle hands. "I remember reading about him," Margaret said softly. "He saved his entire unit." She looked up at Veronica, really seeing her for the first time. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect? Some heartless influencer who would do anything for views. Instead, ... Margaret set the photo down carefully. "Instead, I find a daughter who misses her father as much as I miss my son." Veronica sank onto the couch, exhausted. "I've tried to explain, but no one wants to listen. They've decided who I am, what I meant to do. The video's been shared so many times now, twisted into something ugly. I never meant to disrespect anyone, especially not the fallen soldiers or their families. I'm so sorry about your son, about his headstone being used that way. If I could take it all back." Margaret sat beside her, her anger visibly softening. "You know, Michael loved to dance too. Not formally like you, but he was always moving, always full of life. The other mothers used to joke that he must have springs in his boots during basic training." A small, watery laugh escaped Veronica. "Dad used to say I had stardust in my soul. That's why I couldn't keep still." "Tell me about the dance," Margaret said, her voice gentler now. "The one you do for your father." Veronica wiped her eyes. "It starts with a ballet combination he taught me when I was little. Then it moves into something more free, more joyful. He always said that grief shouldn't stop us from celebrating the love we shared. So every year, I dance to remind myself of that love, to show him I haven't forgotten his lessons." Margaret was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap. "I came here today full of anger, ready to confront someone who had deliberately dishonored our fallen soldiers. But that's not what I found, is it?" "No, ma'am." Veronica's voice was barely a whisper. "What they're doing with these memes, with Michael's headstone, that's the real disrespect." Margaret's jaw tightened. "They're using our grief, our loved ones' memories to fuel their outrage machine. And they're doing it to a young woman who was only trying to honor her father's memory." Veronica looked at Margaret in surprise, not daring to hope for understanding. The older woman reached over and took her hand, her touch warm and steady. "We can't let them turn our love into their hatred," Margaret said firmly. "Both our soldiers deserve better than that." For the first time in weeks, Veronica felt a small spark of hope. In Margaret's eyes, she saw not judgment but recognition, the shared understanding of loss, of love, of the complex ways we keep our departed close to our hearts. Margaret sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the framed photo of Staff Sergeant Robert Hawthorne. The silence in the old farmhouse felt heavy with unspoken grief. Finally, she turned to Veronica, her expression softening. "Tell me everything," Margaret said. "About your father, about the dance. I want to understand." Veronica wiped her tears with trembling fingers. He was everything to me. He taught 3rd grade before joining the military, so he had this amazing way with children. Even after long deployments, he'd come home and jump right back into our little routines like he'd never left." She stood and walked to the mantel, picking up another photograph. This one showing a young Veronica in a tutu, her father lifting her in a perfect arabesque. "Dancing was our special thing. He'd never had formal training, but he loved movement, said it was the purest way to express joy." Margaret nodded, her own eyes growing misty. "Michael was like that too, always in motion. When I was 7, Dad started teaching me simple ballet combinations." Veronica's voice grew stronger as she shared the memory. "He'd learned them from YouTube videos while he was deployed, just so he could surprise me when he came home. We'd practice in the backyard, him counting out the beats while I twirled and leaped. He never cared if I got the steps wrong. He just wanted me to feel the music, to let my happiness show through the movement." She returned to the couch, clutching the photo to her chest. "The last time I saw him, I was 12. He was heading out for another tour in Afghanistan. I was upset, crying about him missing my first real ballet recital. But he just hugged me and said, 'Princess, whenever you dance, I'm watching. And as long as you keep dancing, I'll never really be gone.' Margaret reached out and took Veronica's hand, squeezing it gently. "And that's why you dance at his grave?" "Yes." Veronica's voice cracked. "The first Memorial Day after we lost him, I couldn't bear the thought of just standing there, leaving flowers like everyone else. It felt too final. So I did our favorite combination, right there by his headstone. It was like I could feel him watching, smiling. Since then, it's been our tradition. Every year, I start with the steps he taught me, then move into something more free, celebrating life, just like he always wanted." Tears rolled down Margaret's cheeks now, too. "And the video? You were trying to share that private moment?" "I never meant for it to become what it did." Veronica set the photo down carefully. "My followers know about Dad, about our dance tradition. They've always been so supportive. When I got to what I thought was Cedar Grove Cemetery, I was running late for my usual posting schedule. I didn't check the signs, didn't realize I was at Arlington. The dance just flowed out of me like always. That mix of grief and gratitude and love. I added the trending hashtags without thinking, wanting to inspire others to celebrate their loved ones' memories too." Margaret's expression shifted from understanding to concern. "But now they're using our soldiers' memories as entertainment. Michael's headstone?" "I'm so sorry," Veronica whispered. "If I could take it all back, stop them from turning it into memes and jokes." "No." Margaret's voice was firm. "You were honoring your father in the way he taught you. The people twisting that beautiful moment, using our children's graves for their cruel amusement, they're the ones dishonoring our soldiers." She paused, studying Veronica's face. "Your father saved his entire unit, didn't he?" Veronica nodded. "They told us he saw the ambush coming. Got everyone to safety but couldn't make it back himself. The men who served with him still write to us sometimes, telling us how his quick thinking saved their lives." "A hero," Margaret said softly. "Just like my Michael. He was a combat medic, ran into enemy fire 3 times to save wounded civilians. The 3rd time..." She trailed off, her hand tightening around Veronica's. "I looked up the news articles about your father after I saw the video. I was so angry, so ready to confront the person who had disrespected our fallen soldiers. But sitting here now, seeing these photos, hearing your story..." Margaret shook her head. "I see a daughter keeping her promise to her father, keeping his memory alive through something beautiful. What the internet has done with that moment, that's the real disrespect." Veronica felt something shift in her chest, a tiny loosening of the knot of shame and fear she'd carried since the video went viral. "Most people don't want to hear the real story. They've already decided I'm some heartless influencer who would do anything for views." "Then they're not looking with their hearts," Margaret said. "When I watch that video now, knowing what I know, I don't see disrespect. I see love. I see a young woman refusing to let grief steal her joy, just like her father taught her." She reached up and wiped a tear from Veronica's cheek. "Our soldiers, your father, my Michael, they died protecting the freedom to express ourselves, to celebrate life even in the face of loss. Don't let anyone make you ashamed of honoring your father's memory." They sat together in understanding silence, 2 women connected by loss, but united in their determination to protect the true meaning of remembrance. Through their tears, a bond began to form, one that would prove stronger than any internet outrage could break. Margaret Winston sat at her Kit Winston table, surrounded by printouts of social media posts and news articles. Her wire-rimmed glasses reflected the glow of her laptop screen as she carefully documented the patterns emerging from her research. 12 days had passed since the video went viral, and something wasn't adding up. "This isn't normal," she muttered, marking another timestamp with her red pen. Her years of organizing military family support groups had taught her how social media typically worked. Even the worst scandals usually peaked and faded within days. But the attacks on Veronica weren't dying down. She opened another spreadsheet, tracking the waves of outrage. Every time public interest started to wane, a new surge of coordinated posts would reignite the controversy. Margaret had spent enough time in online military communities to recognize authentic reactions from manufactured ones. The phone rang, startling her from her analysis. It was Veronica, her voice shaking. "Margaret, someone just posted my home address in a veterans forum," Veronica said. "They're calling for people to teach me respect. I'm scared." Margaret's hand tightened on the receiver. "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you. You'll stay with me until we figure this out." While driving to Veronica's house, Margaret's mind raced through the suspicious patterns she'd uncovered. The identical phrasing in thousands of comments, the bot-like accounts sharing the video with inflammatory captions, the precise timing of each new wave of outrage. After getting Veronica settled in her guest room, Margaret returned to her research with renewed determination. She reached out to her network of military spouses and mothers, many of whom worked in cybersecurity or media analysis. "Look at these posting patterns," she typed in a private message to Sarah, whose son served with Michael. "Does this look organic to you?" Sarah's response came quickly. "No way." This is coordinated amplification. Someone's paying good money to keep this story alive. Check out the accounts leading each new wave. They all trace back to Media Dynamics, LLC. Margaret dug deeper into Media Dynamics. The company appeared legitimate on the surface, a reputation management firm helping clients navigate social media crises. But as she followed the digital breadcrumbs, a name kept appearing: Bradley Westmont. "Found something interesting?" Veronica asked, bringing Margaret a cup of tea. The young woman looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights. Margaret gestured to her screen. "Bradley Westmont. He's the CEO of Media Dynamics. They specialize in what they call reputation rehabilitation. But I'm starting to think they create the very crises they claim to solve." Veronica leaned closer, reading the company's website. "Wait, my former manager mentioned this firm, said they could help me rebuild my image for a fee. But it was more money than I'd make in 2 years." "Of course it was," Margaret said grimly. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she pulled up more articles. "Look at this pattern. Every few months someone goes viral for all the wrong reasons. Public outrage, death threats, canceled sponsorships. Then Media Dynamics steps in, offers their services, and suddenly the person is on an apology tour. They book speaking engagements about learning and growing, write books about surviving cancel culture. You think they're behind what's happening to me?" Veronica's voice quivered. "I think they saw an opportunity in your honest mistake. A young influencer, a military cemetery, Memorial Day. It's the perfect storm for manufactured outrage." Margaret pulled up a timeline she'd created. "See these spikes in activity? They're too perfect, too coordinated. Real public anger is messy, unpredictable. This is engineered." A notification popped up on Margaret's screen, an email from another Gold Star mother who worked as a data analyst. The attached files showed hundreds of bot accounts, all activated within minutes of Veronica's video going viral. Their sole purpose seemed to be amplifying negative comments and drowning out any supportive voices. "They're not just keeping the controversy alive," Margaret said, scanning the data. "They're actively suppressing anyone who tries to defend you or explain the context. It's a deliberate campaign to isolate you, make you desperate enough to pay for their help." Veronica sank into a chair, her face pale. "All this because I danced for my dad at the wrong cemetery? They're making money from our grief?" "Not just money." Margaret's voice hardened as she uncovered more connections. "Bradley Westmont has built an empire on manufactured outrage. He creates villains so he can profit from their redemption. And he's getting bolder. These threats you're receiving, the doxing, he's crossing lines he hasn't before." A new email arrived, this one containing internal documents from Media Dynamics, sent by another military mother whose daughter worked in corporate law. The documents outlined their crisis creation strategies in cold, calculating terms. Veronica's name appeared in a recent proposal, with projected revenue figures that made both women gasp. "They planned this," Veronica whispered, reading the document. "They saw my video and instead of letting me explain, they turned it into a weapon. All those people thinking I disrespected our soldiers. It was manipulated from the start." Margaret reached over and squeezed Veronica's hand. "We have evidence now. Real proof of what they're doing. Bradley Westmont thought he could exploit our soldiers' memories for profit, but he didn't count on making enemies of military families." She turned back to her computer, opening a secure email channel to her network of military contacts. "We protected our children when they served," she said, her voice steady with purpose. "Now we'll protect their memories and stop anyone who tries to use their sacrifice for personal gain." The room fell quiet, except for the sound of Margaret's typing, her message going out to hundreds of military families across the country. The truth about Bradley Westmont and media dynamics was about to emerge, and with it, the real story of a daughter's love for her fallen father. Margaret's dining room had transformed into an investigative command center. Laptops, tablets, and paper trails covered every surface. Her military family network had come through with access to social media analysis tools and cybersecurity expertise that would make professional investigators jealous. "Look at this pattern," Veronica said, pointing to a cluster of data on her screen. She'd spent the last 3 days learning to use tracking software from Sarah, Margaret's tech-savvy friend. "These 200 accounts all activated within 5 minutes of each other, and they're all following the same script." Margaret adjusted her glasses, leaning in to study the information. "Paid trolls," she confirmed. "Real people hired to post inflammatory comments. See how their language is just different enough to seem natural? That's more sophisticated than bots." They had uncovered layers to Bradley Westmont's operation that shocked even Margaret's most cynical contacts. The bot networks were just the beginning. There were armies of paid harassers, coordinated mass reporting campaigns to trigger platform algorithms, and carefully timed media leaks to keep controversies in the news cycle. "I've got something," called out Linda, another Gold Star mother who joined their investigation. She worked in financial compliance and had been digging through public records. "Found 6 shell companies all linking back to media dynamics. They're using them to hide payments to troll farms." Veronica pulled up a document on her tablet. "Cross-reference those with these dates," she said, her voice tight with focus. "Every time someone went viral for the wrong reasons, there's a spike in payments from these shell companies." Margaret started mapping the connections on a large whiteboard. Names, dates, and dollar amounts created a web of destruction. Bradley had weaponized social media outrage into a profitable business model. He would identify potential targets, manufacture controversies, then swoop in to offer salvation. For a price. 28 careers destroyed in the last 18 months alone, Margaret said, stepping back from the whiteboard. Actors, athletes, musicians, anyone with a public profile and something to lose. "But why me?" Veronica wondered aloud. "I mean, I had followers, but I wasn't famous like these others." Linda looked up from her laptop. "That's what's been bothering me. Your case doesn't fit the pattern. These other targets, they were all bigger names. More profitable. Going after a mid-level influencer doesn't make business sense for Bradley." Margaret's sharp eyes narrowed. "Unless someone paid him to target you specifically." The room fell silent as that possibility sank in. Veronica's hands trembled slightly as she opened a new search window. "Can we track who hired Media Dynamics in my case?" "Already on it," said Sarah through the video call window on Margaret's laptop. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. "I'm looking at their communication patterns right before your video went viral. Wait, this is weird." "What did you find?" Margaret asked, moving closer to the screen. "They were monitoring Veronica's social media activity before the cemetery video, like weeks before. They had alerts set up for her posts, tracking her location data." Veronica's face went pale. "They were waiting for me to make a mistake." "Not waiting," Margaret corrected, her voice hard with certainty. "Setting you up. The GPS confusion that sent you to Arlington instead of your father's cemetery, could that have been manipulated?" Sarah's typing grew more intense. Checking location spoofing patterns in that area? Yes, there was definitely digital interference that day. Someone wanted you at Arlington National Cemetery on Memorial Day. The revelation hit Veronica like a physical blow. She sank into a chair, wrapping her arms around herself. Everything I lost, my followers, my sponsors, my reputation, it wasn't just bad luck. Someone planned this. Margaret moved to her side, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. And we're going to find out who. Linda, can you trace the payment that started this? It's buried deep, Linda replied, but there's always a trail. Give me time. They worked through the night, following digital breadcrumbs and connecting dots. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Bradley Westmont's operation wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. They found evidence of computer fraud, financial crimes, and coordinated harassment that crossed state lines. My God, Margaret breathed, reviewing a particularly damning set of documents. He's not just profiting from controversy, he's destroying lives and calling it business. Veronica looked up from her own research. How many others are out there? People who lost everything because of his manufactured outrage? People who couldn't fight back? Too many, Margaret answered grimly. But that stops now. We've got enough evidence to expose his whole operation. Sarah's voice came through the laptop speakers. Found something big. The initial payment to target Veronica. It came through 3 different shell companies to hide the source, but I traced it back. You're not going to believe who's behind this. Before she could reveal the name, a notification popped up on Veronica's phone. It was an email from Bradley Westmont himself, offering his company's reputation rehabilitation services for an astronomical fee. The message was smooth, professional, promising to make the controversy disappear as quickly as it had appeared. He thinks I'm desperate enough to pay, Veronica said, her voice shaking with anger rather than fear now. He thinks I'll give him money to fix the damage he caused. Margaret's expression hardened as she read the email over Veronica's shoulder. He has no idea what's coming. He picked the wrong people to victimize. Military families take care of their own. And right now, your family. The room hummed with determined energy as they continued gathering evidence. Someone had paid Bradley Westmont to destroy Veronica's life, but in doing so, they'd exposed his entire operation to the relentless investigation skills of a network of military families who knew how to fight back. They were no longer just clearing Veronica's name. They were taking down a system that profited from pain and turned public shame into a business model. And somewhere in their growing mountain of evidence lay the name of the person who had set this whole tragedy in motion. The sleek glass office building loomed before them in the fading evening light. Veronica's heart pounded as she and Margaret approached the entrance to Media Dynamics. Sarah's tech skills had confirmed Bradley kept physical records of his operation in his office, evidence they desperately needed. Are you sure about this? Veronica whispered, glancing at Margaret. We could wait for Linda's legal team. Margaret adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses with determination. Every minute we wait is another life he could destroy. The security guard changing shifts gives us 15 minutes. We get in, photograph the documents Sarah located, and get out. They had planned this carefully. Sarah had hacked the building's security system, creating a loop in the camera feeds. Margaret's military widow ID card would get them through the front desk. Many companies automatically granted access out of respect. It should have been simple. Should have been. They made it to Bradley's floor without incident. The office was dark and silent. Margaret kept watch while Veronica picked the lock to Bradley's office, using skills learned from Sarah's crash course in tactical entry. The door clicked open. They slipped inside, closing it behind them. Veronica pulled out her phone's flashlight, sweeping it across the pristine office. Check the filing cabinet, Margaret directed, moving toward Bradley's desk. Sarah said the physical records would be... The overhead lights blazed on. Bradley Westmont stood in the doorway, his practiced smile cold as ice. 4 large security guards flanked him. Ladies, Bradley said smoothly, I've been expecting you. Though I must say, breaking and entering is a touch desperate, even for someone in your position, Miss Hawthorne." Veronica's blood ran cold. He'd known they were coming. He'd been watching them. "Run!" Margaret shouted, shoving a stack of papers off Bradley's desk to create confusion. They bolted for the second door, emerging into a maze of cubicles. Heavy footsteps pounded behind them as the security team gave chase. Veronica grabbed Margaret's hand, pulling her along as they weaved through the office. "This way," Veronica gasped, spotting the emergency exit sign. But as they rounded the corner, 2 more guards appeared, cutting off their escape. They spun around only to find Bradley and his men approaching from the other direction. Trapped. "Really, this is embarrassing," Bradley said, straightening his expensive tie. "Did you think I wouldn't monitor the people investigating me? I've been tracking your little amateur detective club for days." Margaret stepped forward, her small frame radiating dignity. "We know what you've done. How many lives you've destroyed for profit." "I provide a service," Bradley replied. "People make mistakes. I help them recover. For a fee, of course. Speaking of which, my offer still stands, Miss Hawthorne. For the right price, this all goes away." "Never," Veronica spat. Bradley shrugged. "Then I'll have to press charges. Breaking and entering, corporate espionage, cybercrimes thanks to your hacker friend. You'll both do serious prison time." Margaret swayed slightly, her hand going to her chest. Veronica noticed her breathing had become labored. "Margaret?" she asked, worried. "I'm fine," Margaret whispered, but her face had gone gray. She stumbled, catching herself on a desk. "Margaret," Veronica caught her as she collapsed, lowering her gently to the floor. Margaret's eyes were wide with pain, her left arm clutching her chest. "Heart ... Margaret gasped. "She's having a heart attack!" Veronica shouted, looking up at Bradley and his men. "She needs help!" Bradley watched impassively. "Perhaps you should have considered her age before dragging her into your revenge scheme." Veronica's fear transformed into rage. She stood, placing herself between Margaret and the men. "Call an ambulance, now." "After we discuss terms," Bradley said. "Delete your evidence, sign an NDA, and—" Veronica didn't let him finish. She charged forward, catching Bradley and his guards off guard. She slammed into the nearest guard, using her dancer's agility to slip past as they tried to grab her. She sprinted for the emergency alarm on the wall and smashed it with her elbow. Sirens blared through the building. By law, emergency services would be automatically notified. "You idiot!" Bradley shouted over the noise. "Grab her!" Veronica dove and rolled as hands grasped for her. She scrambled back to Margaret, who was barely conscious now. "Hold on," she begged, cradling the older woman's head. "Help is coming. Just hold on." The security team surrounded them. Bradley's face was twisted with fury. "Restrain them both! We'll deal with this mess downstairs." "Touch her and I'll make sure every news outlet in the country knows you left an elderly woman to die," Veronica snarled. She pulled out her phone, which had been recording since they entered the building. "Your choice, Bradley. Let the paramedics help her, or watch your entire operation burn tonight." The standoff was broken by the sound of approaching sirens. Bradley's calculated mask returned. "Let them through when they arrive," he ordered his men. "We're all concerned citizens who witnessed a medical emergency. Nothing more." "This isn't over, Miss Hawthorne." Veronica ignored him, focusing on Margaret. "Stay with me," she pleaded. "You're my family now, remember? And military families take care of their own." Margaret's eyes fluttered. Her hand weakly squeezed Veronica's as the paramedics burst through the door, bringing hope with them. The steady beep of heart monitors filled the hospital room as Veronica maintained her vigil at Margaret's bedside. She hadn't left for more than a few minutes since the ambulance ride 3 days ago. The doctors said Margaret had suffered a mild heart attack, and while she would recover, she needed rest and careful monitoring. Veronica leaned forward in the uncomfortable hospital chair, gently holding Margaret's weathered hand. The older woman's silver hair spread across the stark white pillow. her wire-rimmed glasses resting on the bedside table next to a vase of bright yellow daisies. "You should go home and rest," Margaret said softly, her voice stronger than it had been yesterday. "I'm not going anywhere." "Not a chance," Veronica replied, managing a small smile. "I've got my laptop, phone charger, and enough determination to outlast these nurses who keep trying to enforce visiting hours." Margaret's eyes crinkled with affection. "Stubborn girl." She squeezed Veronica's hand. "You know, when I first came to your door, I was ready for battle. Now look at us. You risked everything to save me from that snake, Bradley." "You'd do the same for me," Veronica said. "You already have, standing by me when everyone else believed the worst." "Because I saw the truth in you," Margaret said firmly. "And I promise you this. As long as I'm breathing, you'll never face these battles alone. You're stuck with me now, young lady." Tears welled in Veronica's eyes. "I wouldn't have it any other way." A knock at the door interrupted their moment. Linda Winston, Margaret's daughter-in-law, entered, carrying her laptop and a thick folder. "How are you feeling, Mom?" Linda asked, kissing Margaret's cheek. "Ready to get back to work," Margaret replied. "Tell me you have something." Linda pulled up a chair next to Veronica. "I do. My contacts in the military spouse network have been incredible. Remember Carol, whose husband serves with cybersecurity? She helped me trace some interesting patterns." She opened her laptop, pulling up a series of documents. Media Dynamics wasn't working alone. They were hired by Sterling Talent Management. Veronica sat up straighter. "Sterling? They tried to sign me last year, but I stayed with my smaller agency because they felt too corporate. And their top influencer, Jasmine Hayes, has been losing followers and sponsorships to you for months," Linda explained. "Your authentic connection with your audience was threatening their manufactured image." Margaret's sharp eyes narrowed. "So they hired Bradley to destroy Veronica's reputation rather than compete fairly." "It gets worse," Linda continued, her expression grim. "Carol found evidence of GPS manipulation. The day you went to visit your father's grave, someone hacked your phone's navigation system." Veronica felt the blood drain from her face. "They deliberately sent me to Arlington? This whole nightmare was planned from the very beginning?" Linda nodded, pulling up technical data. "They knew your Memorial Day ritual from your previous posts. They knew you always used GPS to navigate to the cemetery. They created the perfect storm, a grieving daughter's private moment twisted into a viral scandal." "Those monsters," Margaret said, her voice shaking with anger. "To manipulate a child's love for her fallen father for profit? This goes beyond business competition." Veronica stood up suddenly, pacing the small room. "All this time, I've been blaming myself, thinking if I'd just double-checked the location, if I'd been more careful." Her voice broke. "They set me up. They knew exactly what they were doing." "Which means we can prove premeditation," Linda said firmly. "Carol's evidence, combined with what you recorded at Bradley's office, gives us a solid case. My law firm is already preparing the paperwork." Margaret reached for Veronica's hand, pulling her back to the bedside. "Listen to me, dear. What they did was cruel and calculated, but they underestimated one thing." "What's that?" Veronica asked. "They thought you were alone. Just another influencer they could bully into submission." Margaret's grip tightened. "They didn't count on you having a stubborn old military mother in your corner. And we military families, we fight for our own." Linda smiled, closing her laptop. "Carol's team is still digging. The network of military spouses stretches through every branch of service, every level of government. Someone always knows someone who can help." "I don't know how to thank you all," Veronica said, looking between the two women. "When this started, I lost everything. My career, my reputation, my friends. But somehow I ended up gaining something even more precious." "Family," Margaret said simply, "and family never gives up on each other." A nurse entered to check Margaret's vitals, reminding them that the patient needed rest. Linda packed up her materials, promising to return with more information tomorrow. As the room quieted again, Margaret patted the edge of her bed. Veronica sat carefully beside her, mindful of the monitoring wires. "When my son died," Margaret said softly, "I thought my heart would never heal. But loving you, fighting for you, it's given me purpose again. Sometimes family finds us in the most unexpected ways." Veronica leaned her head gently on Margaret's shoulder, letting the steady beep of the heart monitor wash over them. They had started as strangers brought together by grief and anger. Now they were something more, a family forged in adversity, strengthened by love, and ready to fight for justice together. Margaret sat propped up in her home office chair, surrounded by stacks of paper and 3 computer monitors that Linda had helped set up. After 5 days in the hospital, she'd insisted on continuing their work from home. Veronica stood behind her, leaning over her shoulder as they reviewed the evidence they'd gathered. "Look at these patterns," Margaret said, pointing to a spreadsheet tracking social media activity. "Over 200 accounts posting identical messages within seconds of each other. No human network could coordinate that precisely." Veronica nodded, her auburn hair falling forward as she studied the data. "And here's the money trail Linda's team uncovered. Sterling Talent Management paid Media Dynamics $300,000 the day before my video went viral." "The testimonies are what really tell the story," Margaret said, opening another folder on her computer. Faces filled the screen, dozens of people whose lives Bradley had destroyed. 28 victims willing to speak out. Each one followed the same pattern: manufactured controversy, coordinated harassment, then Bradley's company swooping in to offer reputation management services at astronomical prices. "He's ruined so many lives," Veronica whispered, her green eyes filling with tears as she read through the stories. A teacher fired over a manipulated photo. A small business owner bankrupted by fake reviews. A charity worker whose fundraising efforts were destroyed by false accusations. Margaret reached up to squeeze Veronica's hand. "But he won't ruin any more. We have everything we need: the GPS tampering evidence, the bot network data, the financial records, and these brave people willing to testify." Veronica's phone buzzed on the desk. She picked it up, then froze. "Margaret, it's from Bradley." "Put it on speaker," Margaret said, her voice sharp with concern. Bradley's smooth voice filled the room. "Miss Hawthorne, Mrs. Winston, I hope I'm not interrupting your little investigation." His practiced charm couldn't quite hide the tension underneath. "I thought we should have a civilized discussion about your recent activities." "There's nothing to discuss," Veronica said firmly. "We have proof of everything you've done." "Ah, but you see, technology is such a fascinating thing," Bradley replied. "Have you heard of deepfake videos? The quality is remarkable these days, almost impossible to distinguish from reality." Margaret's hands clenched into fists as Bradley continued. "For instance, I have a very convincing video of Miss Hawthorne making disgusting comments about fallen soldiers. And Mrs. Winston, imagine how your military family networks would react to footage of you accepting bribes to exploit Gold Star families." "You're bluffing," Margaret said, but her face had gone pale. "Am I? Check your emails." 2 new messages appeared in their inboxes. The preview clips were short, but devastating, their faces seamlessly mapped onto fictional scenes, speaking words they'd never said. The quality was frighteningly realistic. "I have dozens more ready to release," Bradley said smoothly. "Once they're out there, they'll never truly disappear. Every time someone searches your names, these will surface. Your reputations will be permanently destroyed, not just online, but in the communities you value most." Veronica's hands were shaking. "You monster!" "I prefer pragmatist," Bradley replied. "Here's my offer. Destroy your evidence, end your investigation, and these videos never see the light of day. You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely." The line went dead. Silence filled the room. Margaret stared at the frozen preview clip on her screen, Her own face twisted into an expression of cruel greed she'd never worn. "He's desperate," Veronica said finally. "He wouldn't threaten us if he wasn't scared of what we've uncovered." Margaret nodded slowly. "But he's also dangerous. These deep fakes, they're exactly the kind of weapon he knows how to use. Once they're released, trying to prove they're fake would be nearly impossible." "So what do we do?" Veronica asked, sinking into the chair beside Margaret. "We can't let him keep hurting people, but if he releases these videos—" "We have 24 hours, Margaret said, her practical nature asserting itself. "That's not much time, but it's enough if we move quickly." She pulled up her contact list. Linda's law firm has connections to cybersecurity experts, and Carol's husband in military intelligence. He might know people who can trace the deepfake software. Veronica straightened up, her expression hardening with determination. "Bradley thinks this threat will make us back down. But he doesn't understand what we've learned through all of this." "And what's that, dear?" Margaret asked, already dialing Linda's number. "That the truth matters more than reputation," Veronica said firmly. "That's what my father taught me. That's what you've shown me. Running away from bullies only gives them more power." Margaret's eyes filled with pride. "Well said." She turned to her phone as Linda answered. "Linda, we need everyone. Now Bradley just made his move, and we have less than 24 hours to respond." As Margaret explained the situation to Linda, Veronica began organizing their evidence files. The faces of Bradley's victims seemed to watch her from the screen, reminding her what was at stake. Her father had died protecting others. Now it was her turn to stand up against someone who profited from destroying lives. The next 24 hours would determine everything. But this time, they weren't facing the threat alone. They had truth on their side, and an army of supporters ready to help. Bradley's deepfake threat had only proven how desperate he'd become, and desperate men made mistakes. Margaret hung up the phone and turned to Veronica. "Linda's team is mobilizing. Carol's contacts too. We're going to need every minute of these 24 hours. "Then let's not waste a single one," Veronica replied, pulling her chair closer to the desk. They had evidence to organize, allies to coordinate, and a plan to create. Bradley had just shown his hand. Now it was time for them to play theirs. "Are you sure about this?" Margaret asked, adjusting the tiny microphone hidden in Veronica's collar. They were in a small conference room at Linda's law firm, surrounded by computers and recording equipment. Veronica nodded, checking her phone one last time. 2.8 million followers once watched me fall. Now they'll watch the truth come out." Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "Is everyone ready?" Around the room, a dozen people gave thumbs up. Linda's cybersecurity team monitored multiple screens, while Carol's military intelligence contacts stood ready to trace any digital threats. Margaret's network of military families had mobilized their own social media armies, prepared to share and amplify the live stream the moment it began. "Remember," Linda said, "we need him to explicitly admit to everything. The GPS tampering, the coordinated attacks, the client list, all of it." Veronica took a deep breath and pressed the live stream button on her phone. "Hey everyone," she said softly to the camera. "It's been a while. Today I'm going to show you something important. Please share this stream. The truth needs witnesses." She dialed Bradley's number, putting it on speaker. He answered on the second ring. "Miss Hawthorne, I trust you've made the wise decision?" "We're ready to surrender all the evidence," Veronica said, her voice carefully controlled. "But we need to meet in person to ensure everything's handled properly." There was a pause. "Very well. My office, 1 hour." "No," Veronica said firmly. "Neutral ground. The Plaza Hotel lobby. It's public, safe, and professional. 30 minutes." Another pause. "Acceptable. Bring everything." The line went dead. Linda's team confirmed the stream was working perfectly, with viewer numbers already climbing into the thousands. Military family networks were sharing it rapidly, and news organizations had picked up the feed. 25 minutes later, Veronica walked into the Plaza Hotel's ornate lobby, Margaret at her side. Bradley stood near the center, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His practiced smile faltered slightly when he saw Veronica's phone actively recording. "What's this?" he asked sharply. "Insurance," Veronica replied. "Over 50,000 people are watching right now. If anything happens to us, they'll know." Bradley's smile returned, though his eyes were cold. "Nothing will happen if you cooperate. The evidence, please." "First, I want to understand why," Veronica said, her voice carrying clearly through the hidden microphone. "Why target me specifically? Why hire someone to hack my GPS and send me to Arlington?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Bradley said smoothly. "I simply offered reputation management services after your unfortunate video went viral." $200,000, Margaret interjected. "That's what Sterling Talent Management paid your company the day before the incident, to eliminate their competition, a young influencer whose popularity threatened their top client." Bradley's smile tightened. "You have no proof of such ridiculous claims." "We have the bank records," Veronica said. The viewer count was now over 100,000. "We have the bot network data. We have 28 other victims ready to testify. But what we really have, Mr. Westmont, is you. Right here, right now, with the whole world watching." She held up her phone, showing him the live stream comments flooding in. "Your entire operation depends on shadows and secrets, but you're not in the shadows anymore." Bradley's composure cracked slightly. "You're making a serious mistake." "Like you made with the deepfakes?" Veronica asked. "The ones our cybersecurity team has already traced back to your servers?" His face darkened. "You think you understand this game? I built this industry. Every viral controversy, every canceled celebrity, every reputation destroyed and rebuilt. That's my work. Sterling paid me $300,000 to eliminate you because I guarantee results." The lobby had gone silent. Bradley realized too late what he'd done, his own words echoing back from Veronica's phone speakers. "And the GPS hack?" Veronica pressed, watching him unravel. "Was that your idea?" "Of course it was," Bradley snapped. "You were too genuine, too likable. We needed something dramatic, something unforgivable. Arlington National Cemetery on Memorial Day. It was perfect. The location data manipulation was simple. The outrage was guaranteed." The viewer count passed 500,000. Bradley's phone began buzzing frantically in his pocket. "And the other victims?" Margaret asked quietly. "The teacher, the charity worker, the small business owner." "Necessary casualties," Bradley snarled. "You think reputation management is about truth? It's about control. Create the crisis, amplify the outrage, then sell the solution. Millions of dollars from desperate people who'll pay anything to make the nightmare stop." "That's all we needed," Veronica said softly. "Thank you for confessing to criminal conspiracy, fraud, cybercrimes, and extortion, all streamed live to—" She checked her phone. "Or to 1.2 million viewers and counting." Bradley lunged for her phone, but Margaret's military family contacts emerged from the lobby's discreet positions. They weren't in uniform, but their bearing made their background clear. Bradley found himself surrounded. "The FBI is already on their way," Linda announced, walking up with her laptop. "They're particularly interested in your client list and victim files. I imagine Sterling Talent Management will be getting some interesting calls today, too." Bradley's face had gone ashen. "You don't understand what you've done. The people I work for—" "Will probably distance themselves very quickly," Margaret interrupted. "No one likes a liability, Mr. Westmont. You taught us that." Veronica stepped closer to him, her phone still streaming. "You destroyed lives for profit. You tried to destroy mine. But you forgot something important. The truth always matters more than reputation." The hotel's front doors opened as FBI agents entered. Bradley's shoulders slumped in defeat as they approached. The live stream captured everything: his surrender, the formal arrest, the reading of his rights. The viewer count had passed 2 million, with hundreds of thousands of shares and supportive comments flooding in. In the days following Bradley Westmont's arrest, justice moved with unprecedented speed. The evidence gathered through the live-stream confession, combined with the extensive documentation Margaret and Veronica had collected, left federal prosecutors with an airtight case. Bradley faced multiple felony charges, including criminal harassment, wire fraud, and cyber terrorism. The FBI's cybercrime division worked through the weekend, seizing servers and uncovering the full scope of Bradley's operation. What they found shocked even veteran investigators: hundreds of victims, millions in illegal profits, and a sophisticated network of digital manipulation that stretched across the globe. Veronica watched from Margaret's Kit Winston table as the news coverage rolled in. "Reputation management empire crumbles," read one headline after another. Bradley's company dissolved within days as clients fled and employees rushed to cooperate with authorities. "Look at this," Margaret said, adjusting her reading glasses as she studied her tablet. "The settlement offers are coming in already." She turned the screen toward Veronica, showing an email from Linda's law firm. The numbers made Veronica's eyes widen. "That's a lot of money," Veronica whispered. Margaret nodded. Bradley's victims are all receiving compensation, but more importantly, they're getting their lives back. Sterling Talent Management hadn't escaped the fallout. Their involvement in the scheme triggered multiple investigations and a catastrophic loss of clients. The agency that had once tried to destroy Veronica was now fighting for its own survival. "Your follower count is back up," Margaret noted, glancing at Veronica's phone. 2.8 million again. People want to hear your voice." Veronica picked up her phone, studying the flood of supportive messages and apologies. Her reputation had been fully restored, but something felt different. The endless cycle of posts, likes, and shares seemed hollow now. "I don't want to go back," she said quietly, "to being just an influencer, dancing and promoting products. It feels empty after everything we've been through." Margaret reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "So, what do you want to do instead?" Veronica's eyes lit up with an idea. "What if we used social media for something meaningful, something that honors both our fathers?" Over the next hour, they sketched out their vision on Margaret's Kit Winston notepad. The Memorial Heritage Foundation would use social media to tell the stories of fallen service members, creating digital memorials that celebrated their lives and preserved their legacies. "We could help families share their memories," Veronica explained, growing animated. "Create tribute videos, coordinate memorial events, build support networks. Use all my social media experience for something that actually matters." Margaret's eyes glistened. "My military family networks would be eager to help. We could reach so many people who need this kind of platform." They worked through the night, fueled by coffee and purpose. By morning, they had a detailed plan. The settlement money would provide initial funding. Linda's law firm helped with the paperwork, and within weeks, the Memorial Heritage Foundation was officially launched. Veronica's first post for the foundation featured the story of Staff Sergeant Robert Hawthorne, her father. She shared photos, memories, and, yes, even a dance. But this time the context was clear. This was a daughter's tribute, a celebration of a life well lived and sacrificed for others. The response was overwhelming. Military families from across the country reached out, wanting to share their own stories. Margaret coordinated with her network, organizing local chapters and support groups. What had started as a simple idea grew into a movement. 3 months after Bradley's arrest, Veronica stood at her father's actual grave, the right cemetery this time. Margaret stood beside her, both women holding flowers. "I think he would be proud," Margaret said softly. "Both our sons would be." Veronica nodded, wiping away tears. "We turned something horrible into something beautiful. That's what matters." Their phones buzzed simultaneously, notifications from the Foundation's app. Another family had just shared their story, another fallen hero honored, another connection made in a growing network of remembrance and support. "Ready for the memorial event tomorrow?" Margaret asked as they walked back to the car. The Foundation's first major gathering would bring together hundreds of military families for a day of storytelling, remembrance, and celebration. "Ready," Veronica confirmed. She wasn't nervous about being in front of people anymore. This wasn't about followers or fame. This was about purpose. As they drove home, Veronica reflected on how much had changed. The social media influence she'd once chased now served a greater purpose. The dance that had nearly destroyed her career had become a symbol of healing for other families coping with loss. Even the viral nature of modern media, which had once been weaponized against her, now helped spread messages of hope and remembrance. Margaret seemed to read her thoughts. "Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to our true calling," she said. "We just have to be brave enough to follow that path when it appears." Veronica smiled, thinking of all the families they'd helped already, and the many more to come. Her phone showed another notification, a message from a Gold Star mother thanking them for helping preserve her daughter's memory. "I'm not an influencer anymore," Veronica said with quiet certainty. "I'm a guardian of memories, and that means everything." The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Lincoln Cemetery as Veronica Hawthorne walked hand in hand with Danny Rodriguez between the rows of headstones. Margaret Winston followed a few steps behind, carrying a bouquet of bright yellow daisies, Staff Sergeant Robert Hawthorne's favorite flowers. 1 year had passed since the Bradley Westmont scandal, but it felt like a lifetime ago. The Memorial Heritage Foundation now helped thousands of military families share their stories and heal together. Through that work, Veronica had met Danny, a Marine veteran who lost his leg in Afghanistan and now counseled other wounded warriors. "This is it," Veronica said softly, stopping at her father's headstone. The polished granite reflected the morning light, her father's name and dates etched with dignity. Staff Sergeant Robert James Hawthorne, United States Army. Danny squeezed her hand. At 32, he carried himself with quiet strength, his prosthetic leg moving smoothly as he helped Margaret arrange the flowers. His gentle brown eyes held understanding that could only come from walking a similar path of loss and redemption. "Hey, Dad," Veronica whispered, touching the cool stone. "I brought some special people to meet you this year." Margaret stepped forward, placing her hand on Veronica's shoulder. "Robert would be so proud of you, sweetheart. The foundation has touched so many lives." Veronica smiled through tears. "I never imagined that terrible day at Arlington would lead to all of this. Meeting you, Margaret. Finding my true purpose. Meeting Danny." Danny wrapped his arm around her waist. "Sometimes the worst moments show us who we're meant to become," he said. They had connected instantly when he visited the foundation office 6 months ago, sharing their stories of loss and healing over coffee that turned into dinner. "Remember when you first told me about the dance tradition?" Danny asked, his eyes twinkling. "How you and your dad would celebrate life instead of just mourning." Veronica nodded. The memory was bittersweet, but beautiful. "We'd put on his favorite song and just move. No fancy steps, just pure joy. He said dancing was like giving thanks with your whole body." "Show me?" Danny asked softly. Veronica looked around the quiet cemetery. No phones, no cameras, no social media pressure. Just the morning breeze and the presence of those she loved most. "Actually," she said, pulling out her phone, "I have Dad's song right here." The opening notes of "What a Wonderful World" drifted through the morning air. Danny held out his hand, and Veronica took it without hesitation. They began to move together, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Margaret watched with tears in her eyes as Danny spun Veronica in a gentle turn. His prosthetic leg moved smoothly, years of physical therapy allowing him to dance with natural grace. Veronica's face glowed with joy as they swayed together, her father's favorite song carrying them through the moment. This wasn't a performance for millions of followers. This was pure celebration of life, of love found through loss, of healing that came from helping others heal. As they danced, Veronica remembered all the paths that had led here. The viral video that nearly destroyed her. Margaret showing up at her door in righteous anger, then becoming the mother figure she desperately needed. The foundation work that introduced her to Danny, whose understanding of both military service and personal loss helped her fully embrace her father's memory. The song ended, but Danny kept holding her close. "Thank you for sharing this with me," he whispered. "Thank you for understanding it," Veronica replied. Margaret wiped her eyes, then reached into her bag. "I brought something special today." She pulled out a small photo album. "Some pictures of your father the military family network helped me find, including one from his own dancing days." They sat together on a nearby bench, flipping through photos of a younger Robert Hawthorne. There he was, at his sister's wedding, spinning his mother across the dance floor. Another showed him teaching a tiny Veronica to twirl in their backyard. "He really did love to dance," Danny observed, studying the joy captured in each image. "He said life was too precious not to celebrate," Veronica remembered, "even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." The morning sun climbed higher as they shared stories. Danny talked about his own healing journey, how helping other veterans had given him purpose after his injury. Margaret spoke about how the Foundation's work had helped her process her son's loss in new ways. "You know what amazes me?" Veronica said, looking between her two companions. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. My career, my reputation, everything I'd built. But losing all that fake connection led me to the most real relationships I've ever had." Danny kissed her temple. "That's because you're not hiding behind a screen anymore. You're just you, the amazing, compassionate woman who turned her pain into purpose." Margaret nodded in agreement. "And look how many lives you've touched by being authentic. The Foundation helps people share their real stories, not carefully curated versions of themselves." Veronica stood and walked back to her father's headstone, touching the letters of his name. "I get it now, Dad," she said softly. "Why you always said celebration was more important than fame. Why you taught me to dance instead of pose. Real joy comes from connection, not attention." Danny and Margaret joined her, forming a circle of support around the grave. The morning breeze carried the scent of Margaret's daisies, and somewhere nearby, a bird began to sing. "Want to dance one more time?" Danny asked. "All of us together?" Veronica looked at Margaret, who smiled and nodded. The music began again. What a wonderful world, filling the peaceful morning air. This time all three of them moved together, Margaret's silver hair shining in the sunlight, as Danny and Veronica each held one of her hands. They danced in celebration of memory, of healing, of the unexpected gifts that can emerge from life's darkest moments. And somewhere, Veronica was certain her father was dancing too. Thanks for tuning in. These stories remind us that life is more than headlines. It's about heartlines. Subscribe if you want more moments that make you pause, feel, and reflect.